Good afternoon, and welcome to our online discussion of euthanasia, assisted suicide, and other ending-of-life practices for the 23rd of January, 2015. My name is Amy Hasbrook, and this is Christian Debray.
Hi.
And I am the director of Toujours Vivant-Not Dead Yet. We are a project of the Council of Canadians with Disabilities, which has the goal of unifying, informing, and giving voice to the disability rights opposition to assisted suicide, euthanasia, and other ending-of-life practices that have a discriminatory effect on people with disabilities. There are a lot of reasons that we take this position, but four of the major reasons are that, first of all, it's unnecessary, because everyone already has the option either to commit suicide or to refuse medical care and have palliative sedation on demand. So people already have those rights. It doesn't need to be legalized. Secondly, we believe it's discriminatory to legalize assisted suicide and euthanasia because while people with disabilities receive suicide prevention services if they express a wish to die, people with disabilities will be encouraged and even helped to die, and that's differential treatment that has a discriminatory impact. Thirdly, we believe that the choice to die cannot be free as long as people with disabilities don't have the choice in where and how to live. And that is certainly true for many people with disabilities. And finally, evidence has shown in all the jurisdictions where it's legal that safeguards simply do not work. In most jurisdictions, the systems make it difficult to find information about whether the program actually prevents people from dying who shouldn't be killed. But in fact, we see both in Europe and in Washington and Oregon that there are people who die who should not have been killed under those programs. The goal of our online discussion is to give people with disabilities a place to talk about these issues from our point of view. We are consumers of the healthcare system. We have experienced its strengths and its weaknesses. Many of us have outlived our prognoses. Many of us have had treatments withheld or delayed such that it put our lives in jeopardy. And so we know these issues and want to show that the discrimination that exists in the healthcare system can put people's lives in jeopardy. And the debate on this issue is usually described as between conservatives who oppose assisted suicide and liberals and progressives who are in favor of it. But people with disabilities are actually more progressive than the progressives, yet we oppose assisted suicide because we know that it's a product of discrimination and a lack of an appropriate social safety net. There are lots of different ways to participate. You can use, you go to YouTube and look for euthanasia and disability, and you'll find videos there. And you can also go to Google Hangouts on Air and find our Hangout. If you go to YouTube, you'll find my YouTube channel, and you'll be able to watch old videos of what we've done. If you visit the Google Hangout on Air, you will be, well, either YouTube or Google Hangout on Air. You can submit questions, or you can request to join the chat directly. And for more information on the topics that we discussed during our conversation, you can email me at info@tv-ndy.ca. Go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/toujourvivant-not-dead-yet. Follow me on Twitter @TVNDY, or go to our website at tvndy.ca. So today's topics are how not to work in coalition with disability rights groups, Dying with Dignity in Canada loses its charitable status, and we have some news briefs coming up. And then we'll have commentary throughout with our radio blah blah feature. So Christian will join me making comments on the news for this week. And our first item is how not to work in coalition with disability rights groups. Not Dead Yet in the United States published a blog post explaining their reasons for not working in coalition with the Family Research Council. And just for a little background, they are a very conservative religious group based in Colorado who have a mega church and some things like that. Without contacting NDY leaders or working with existing local coalitions, they included disability rights activists. Local coalitions that included disability rights activists. FRC sent out announcements to national groups about a meeting in Washington, D.C., implying disability participation and support of that meeting.
Which is good.
Which is, well, I mean,
relatively good.
They can't really imply disability support if they hadn't contacted people with disabilities.
Yeah, that's the problem with this meeting.
Right, exactly. So when the Family Research, after they sent this implication around, they also put organizer John Kelly's name on the agenda as a speaker without asking if he wanted to speak. John actually refused this invitation because he does not agree with their politics in other senses. In the Not Dead Yet blog, President and founder Diane Coleman stated that NDY has, in fact, worked in coalition with other groups whose policies and philosophies are very different from those of NDY. And we have a lot of examples of that. And the name is slipping at the moment, but in the Massachusetts referendum effort, we worked with several different groups, both of doctors and religious groups.
Yeah.
And in her blog post, Diane stated that we work in coalition with other groups on the assisted suicide issue, mainly by participating in conference calls to share useful information with groups that we tend to disagree with on other issues, and disagree is stating that mildly. We've had a lot of practice with them and us, leaving our disagreements at the door. So, for example, a lot of the religious groups are very anti-gay, and there are a lot of members of NDY who are gay.
Yeah.
A lot of them are anti-abortion, and most people in NDY are pro-abortion.
Pro-abortion.
Right, or pro-choice in this case. So we just leave our issues at the door and we work together on this one issue.
And work in a coalition with one target.
Exactly. Disability groups who oppose assisted suicide have had other problems working with non-disabled groups. And some of those problems is that our experience, expertise, and authority are neither recognized nor respected. And you remember when we had that meeting a couple of years ago with the doctors. That they just didn't want to listen to us.
Yeah, we tried to explain them some issue and some experience that we had before, and they doesn't listen to us, and they just fall in the trap.
Yeah, and one thing that happens a lot with doctors who think they know everything is, oh yes, we understand, and they
poor you.
Yeah. And also there were some religious people at that meeting, and they, we told them from our experience that message doesn't go over very well, but they didn't want to listen, and that
they lose effort and money.
Right, exactly. People with disabilities are used as symbols, but excluded from the decision-making process. That happens a lot, and
there is always one crippled guys or women,
right,
just for the show.
Right, exactly. And they like to bring out those sad stories, and that's certainly what the plaintiffs did in the Carter case. Their lawyer has a disability, so that must mean it's okay with disabled people.
Yeah.
The public thinks that we have no opinion or agency apart from the members, other members of the coalition. So, for example, one of the people one of the members of NDY who's gay was told that she must really be a closet conservative because the Family Research Council was including disabled people.
Yeah.
So members of other groups often can't restrain themselves from expressing their values or other issues that apart from assisted suicide and euthanasia, or from speaking about assisted suicide in ways that confuse the message. And I think for me, the best example of that was when there was a demonstration, and there were some people in one of the groups that started singing about all we are saying is give life a chance. And that is not helpful.
Not at all.
And fortunately, someone went over to them and that they respected, because when I said it, they didn't listen, but someone that they respected went over and said, don't do that.
Please.
Please. So why then, if with all this trouble, would we want to work in coalition at all? Well, first, because we need ideas, support, and resources that these other groups have.
Yeah, even if we disagree on some subject, we still have some experience to share.
Right, exactly. And they have a lot of people that they're in touch with, and they may have access to services that we need. And so we can bring our groups to and share information. And
every group has its strength, and we have to put together whatever we have to fight this awful thing, which is assisted suicide and euthanasia.
Yeah. Another reason is because working together makes us stronger than everybody working separately, and that's a important reason. And finally, because educating our allies is as important as educating our opponents. It's one thing for people who oppose assisted suicide to, be kind of working against us, but it's important that people who are on the same side of the issue understand that it's not about, that our lives are as valuable as everybody else's. So that's another reason to work in coalition. How should other groups opposed to assisted suicide and euthanasia approach working in coalition with us? Diane had some suggestions. First, to contact the leaders and grassroots of the movement that is already working on the ground. So
that's a minimum.
Right. So instead of starting something new, look what's already happening and work with them.
And say, you will speak that time and that day without even asking.
Right. That doesn't work.
It doesn't work at all.
Right. Also, to take a neutral approach and approach in a respectful way, keeping in mind the need for accessibility. And you mentioned earlier about the lack of accessibility.
Yeah, in some place, we are invited to speak or to participate in
have a meeting.
And when we arrive, what we see is stairs and no place that a wheelchair could come in.
Right.
And so it's kind of bizarre.
Right.
You are there for a certain meeting and they are supposed to be accessible and they are not.
Right. And that even happens after we point out that it needs to be accessible.
Yeah.
And we show up and we offer all kinds of help to make it accessible. No, we don't need your help. It's all set. And then we show up and it's not accessible.
Yeah, and they think this is accessible because they could furnish 2 strong men to carry out your wheelchair for 2 or 3 stairs.
Right. Yeah, that's not accessibility.
Not accessible.
Right. If you want to work in coalition, you need to explain honestly what you're hoping to get from cooperation. And you need to expect the expertise, experience, and authority of people with disabilities. In other words, listen and learn. And finally, well, not finally, you need to negotiate in good faith the terms of the working relationship. And finally, you need to focus on the subject of assisted suicide and prevent your members from going off message. That's really, really important.
Really important, because one bad sentence somewhere could destroy a week or a month of work.
Right, exactly. If one person says the wrong thing, you know the media is going to pick it up, and you know that that's going to be what ends up in the paper or on the internet, and it destroys all, you know, everything else that everyone else says. No one hears it because they only hear that one thing, and all your good work is destroyed.
Keep the message online.
Yep. Stay on message, as we say.
Yep.
So, okay, the next item today is that the group Dying with Dignity has lost its charitable status. This week we learned that the Canadian group has lost its charitable status because the Canada Revenue Agency did an audit and decided that they didn't meet the requirements for a charitable group. The Revenue Agency stated that the group did not engage in any educational activities of a charitable nature. I should say that I have looked very closely at those regulations, and they are extremely strict. You are not allowed to do advocacy. You are not allowed to do lobbying. You are not allowed to do stuff to promote any bill. You can do something of defense of existing rights, but really you're not supposed to do political stuff. But groups like Dying with Dignity, most of their work is about lobbying. So
They lose it.
Right, they lost their status. And losing the status means that donors will not be able to deduct a part of their gift on their taxes. And many people rely on that in making donations to lower their taxes. Articles that I've seen reporting on this news have linked the fate of Dying with Dignity with audits being done by the Canada Revenue Agency of environmental and human rights groups. And specifically, one article quoted NDP Revenue Agency critic Murray Rankin, who said that the Harper government has targeted groups that do not agree with him. And that's, as I said, environmental and human rights groups, and that has been very true. They've been...
Yeah, there is a link, and it's obvious that Harper target whatever group who disagree with him.
Right, right. I mean, I have observed that over the past few years, and it's been very disturbing for those of us who care about the environment to watch what's been happening.
Yeah.
So, and since the Canadian media seems pretty biased toward assisted suicide, it's likely that most people will have the same interpretation as Mr. Rankin. So if the media points out that connection, people are going to understand it. If the media weren't all over this story, or if they didn't point out the connection, maybe the public wouldn't understand. But whereas with these other situations, they may not be quite so vocal. The media is definitely pointing out the connection. And even though they've lost their charitable status, it may, in fact, lead to an increase in sympathy and donations for Dying with Dignity. And so that's could be a negative outcome in the end.
Yeah, could be negative or positive for them, but you doesn't really know. But sympathy sometimes is more powerful than the amount of money they lose.
Yeah, right. So that's what we're afraid of, is that they'll get a lot of sympathy from people who don't like Harper and his policies, which is a lot of people, and that they'll get a lot of money for that. So that's very frustrating. Okay, let's go on to our news briefs today, which is Quebec's Suicide Prevention Week is coming up shortly. And that's the Suicide Prevention Awareness Week will take place from February 1st to 7th in this year in Quebec. And it's important to remember that a major risk indicator for suicide is developing a disability or the diagnosis of a serious illness. And if you look at the suicide prevention literature, it's all through there. Every test or chart for indicating, someone's risk for suicide, it's always there. Diagnosis of an illness or developing a disability is a factor to increase the risk for suicide.
It's obvious.
Right. However, people who push the idea of assisted suicide say that these people are not depressed, which is kind of bizarre.
Very bizarre, but when you are inclined to do a suicide, normally it's because you are kind of depressed, discouraged, or whatever. Life is the right way, not the wrong way.
Right, exactly. So our message for Suicide Prevention Week is why do non-disabled people who express a desire to die receive suicide prevention services, while people with disabilities who say the same thing get help to kill themselves? And that's the message that we need to spread. Every time we hear somebody talk about, the importance of preventing suicides, that's great, but we need to make that as a uniform public policy instead of allowing some people to get help to kill themselves.
Yeah.
And we need to keep in mind that suicides by people with disabilities in Quebec, there have been several recent ones that most have been related to either a failure to provide adequate treatment or services to support independence. Earlier this month, we heard about the coroner's report on a suicide that happened a few years ago because the SAAQ would not pay for somebody's mental health treatment. And last fall, we heard about 2 men who committed suicide because both of them were going to lose their independent living. And it really can drive people to want to die.
Yeah, to be independent, to control your life is very, very important. It's the most important. That's what the prisoner lose when you put them in prison. And when we go to elderly
Nursing home.
Most of the time it's close to prison. Why? You are forced to same time dinner, supper, breakfast, 1 bath a week, and maybe more if you are lucky, but you doesn't decide what time and what time you go to bed. Sometimes you are forced to be in home before that time. So there's many rules, so you are never ever in control of your life, which is very close to prison rules.
I'm just gonna see if we have somebody who wants to.
Oui,
See.
il y en a un. Mais il n'y a pas de question.
Is that somebody who wants to come on? Can you read that? I can't read it.
Sorry. Il y avait quelqu'un qui nous écoute. C'est marqué.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry about that. I just have
Sorry, we have technical trouble.
Yeah, we have a blind person having technical difficulties. There we go.
Okay, we are back in our normal operation.
Okay.
Sorry for viewers.
Okay. So that's it for. Did you have anything else you wanted to say about?
Not really, except keep fighting. Life is important. Let's say suffering is not the main matter of asking for suicide.
Yeah.
And I'm a kind of an example. I suffer a lot of time, and I will suffer for the rest of my life, but I like my life, and I will live it to the end normally.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention is that people who support assisted suicide say that it's my choice. But the thing is, if somebody is suffering and they ask their doctor for pain relief or relief of their symptoms, and the doctor either won't do it or can't deal or can't provide it, or
for any reason,
for whatever reason, and usually it's because the doctor doesn't know how to relieve pain, or if the person doesn't want to live in a nursing home and wants to live independently. If they ask and they don't get what they want, that's not choice. But if somebody asks to die and the doctor or the society says, okay, we'll do that, that doesn't mean the person got any better choice, that they had more control. It means that the doctor or society went along with what they asked for. But it's not really different. They didn't, it's just they happened to ask for the thing that society was willing to give. But really, the point is to be able to live with a disability, or with the best care that you can. And palliative care and pain management can be very effective if done right. And it's not really accurate to say that a person who's choosing to, quote unquote, die with dignity is taking control, because it's ultimately in the control of the doctor who says yes or no.
Yeah.
So, okay. As we mentioned at the end of last year, there are many new bills that would legalize assisted suicide that are coming up in the United States. The Dying with Dignity group in the US, their website has a list that of states where they expect bills would be introduced or already have been introduced. And this is a long list. There are 17 of them, and the list,
very long list.
The list includes California, where it's already been introduced, Colorado, Connecticut, the District of Columbia, Delaware, Hawaii, Iowa, Kansas, Maryland, Massachusetts, Missouri, Nevada, New Hampshire, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Wyoming. And some of those may sound familiar because, in fact, last year, assisted suicide was defeated in Connecticut, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts. But the people who want this just keep pushing and pushing. And because those of us who oppose don't have that much in the way of resources, and because every time a new legislature comes in, we have to educate a new set of people, it just goes on and on.
The same reason, and we have to keep fighting.
Right, right. And this new wave of pushing for assisted suicide is being supported by the continuing exploitation of Brittany Maynard's story. Her husband is currently doing the talk show circuit in the United States and prompting articles, blog posts, and exchanges on social media about the issues.
And this guy has it's mainly easy for this guy to get some talk show or any kind of a crowd, and for us getting some small publicity or to get a show, it's very difficult for us. Right. Because press and TV and most of publication are biased for euthanasia and assisted suicide.
Right, right, exactly. So, of all of those issues, did you have any other comments you wanted to make?
Not really. It's the starting of a new year, so happy new year for everybody, and keep fighting.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, so if you want to make any comments on what you've heard or contact us, there's lots of ways to do it. You can follow me on Twitter at @TVNDY. You can visit our website at tvndy.ca. You can visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/toujours vivant not dead yet, or you can email me at info@tvndy.ca. tv-ndy.ca. If you want to watch old former videos of our discussions online on other subjects, you can go, if you do a
YouTube.
Yep, you can go to YouTube and do a search for disability and euthanasia, and you will find our videos. There are a lot of them, and each week we focus on different topics. So you can check out the videos on YouTube. Thank you for joining us.
See you next week.
Yep, look forward to seeing you next week. Take good care. Goodbye.